Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. If you could do me a quick favor, see that little subscribe button at the bottom of your screen? Go ahead, click that subscribe button. Really does help our channel grow, our audience grow, and I really do appreciate it more than you know. So click that subscribe button. Appreciate your support. Now, here's the video that you came here for. Okay, and listen, we just talked a lot about the game itself. We just talked a lot about the final score. We just talked about some of the semantics of UCLA scoring first, the onside kick. They go up 10-0, all of that. The safety at the end that Penn State was not prepared for. But I bring it up because, we've talked throughout the season about inflection points at certain programs. Luke in the chat has talked about it's an inflection point for Kentucky football with Mark Stoops. We've talked about it being an inflection point for Dabo Swinney and Clemson. We'll talk about the Tigers later. This feels like an inflection point for Penn State football. Okay, we're not going to go through all the semantics. We have to talk about the main conversation out of this game. And that is, what the heck do you do with James Franklin? Let's go ahead and dive in. I mean, listen, we talked about James Franklin coming out of the Oregon game last week. We talked about how disappointing it is. We talked about the fact that, 4-21 against top 10 opponents. But at the same time, that was kind of always the deal that you made with James Franklin if you were a Penn State fan. You always made the deal of it could be worse. Yeah, this guy never beats anyone of consequence. And by the way, of those 4 wins over top 10 opponents, 2 of them were over SMU and Boise State in the college football playoff. Okay, by the way, I saw this stat. It's incredible. How about this? James Franklin has 1 top 10 win against Big Ten opponents in the regular season. It was Ohio State in 2016. You know who else now has 1 win against top 10 teams in Big Ten regular season games? Tim Skipper in his second game as UCLA interim head coach, okay? So it's really bad, and this is the problem with James Franklin with Penn State, is that this is the deal that you have made with James Franklin mentally, psychologically, if you're a Penn State fan. You are willing to sometimes come out on the wrong end of an Ohio State game or a Michigan game or now an Oregon game with the understanding that, yeah, we can't quite get over the hump, but we never lose to teams that we shouldn't. Okay. And if I can defend James Franklin for half a second, I saw this stat. I didn't even send it to you, Matt, but the stat was, I believe it was Ralph Russo from The Athletic tweeted out that since taking over in 2014, James Franklin has 6 losses to teams that finished below 500 on the season. 3 were in year 1, 2 were in the COVID season. So essentially, he has 1 loss in 9 other seasons against teams that finished below 500. And so this is the deal that you have always made with James Franklin. We're not, we're going to be patient with you when you can't get over the hump with UCLA, but you're going to beat Rutgers, Illinois, Purdue, Iowa, Indiana, whoever are the teams that you're supposed to beat, you're going to take care of them. But now, I think this absolutely opens this whole new Pandora's box of, what do you make of James Franklin? What do you make of this team specifically in this season? Because we've talked a lot about Penn State over the course of the last couple months, summer into fall. And with Penn State, it was all building towards this year. And I want to take half a second and give Penn State fans credit. I think too often we in the media criticize fan bases and, they expect this and they expect that, and that's not realistic. I think Penn State fans have been insanely patient with James Franklin. They have sacrificed, you go back 3-4 years ago, we can't get over Ohio State, but at some point we're going to get this 12-team playoff. It's going to be okay. And 2 years ago, it was like, the 12-team playoff is on the horizon. And even last year it was, okay, we didn't beat Ohio State, but we made the playoff. And now everything's gearing up for the 2025 season. Drew Aller's back. Nick Singleton's back. Katron Allen's back. We loaded up at wide receiver in the portal. We signed Jim Knowles as our defensive coordinator. This was the year Penn State fans have been patient. Well, guess what? I think Penn State was essentially unofficially eliminated from the college football playoff on Saturday afternoon. That sounds crazy. It sounds hyperbolic, but just think about this. They're currently sitting at 3-2, 0-2 in the Big Ten. Okay. So the likelihood already that they get to the Big Ten championship game is slim, but beyond that, they still have to play at Ohio State. They're not beating Ohio State because we have a 12-year track record that James Franklin does not win those games. So if you finish 9-3 with a loss to Oregon, with a loss to Ohio State, guess what that means? It means you're not getting into the college football playoff at 9-3 when you have 0 great wins and 1 loss that I just don't think is going to age well. UCLA, even in a best case scenario, what is UCLA? 5-7, 6-6? Like, that's a best case scenario. That's not a good win. And by the way, we saw it last year with Ole Miss, weighed down all year by the loss to Kentucky, and they had a great win over Georgia. And so I think Penn State's season is unofficially over. I think there are going to be big questions to be asked of James Franklin. And I'll say this, it's going to sound mean. I didn't love the message that he had for everyone after the game. Producer Matt, go ahead and play James Franklin talking about this loss and talking about basically blaming the media for the state of the program.
To tune out all the outside noise. I thought our guys worked hard at doing that last week, but obviously not well enough. Not well enough. So, we got to stick together. The coaches, the players in the locker room, offense, defense, and special teams. The reality is we didn't play well enough in all 3 phases to win the game. And there's going to be a lot out there to divide, and we got to tune all that out and stick together.
It's going to be a lot out there to divide. Listen, we in the media have a job to do. We're not dividing you when we talk about you losing as a 28-point or whatever it was, 26, 24 and a half, whatever it was. It was well over a 3-touchdown favorite on the road to a team that was 0-4 and had never led at any point in the game this season. This isn't about us in the media dividing you. This is about us in the media having a real conversation about who you are, where you're going, and where your season is. And so I bring it up because as I look deeper into this Penn State situation, again, this is a conversation we've had a little bit about Dabo Swinney. I really am starting to wonder, and I give credit, other people in the media are asking the same question. I mentioned it with Dabo a few weeks ago. Is it time for Dabo to consider escape from Clemson? And I wonder if it's the same with James Franklin at Penn State. Okay, so to be clear, and I think everybody knows, we all know how buyouts work, but it's worth noting, buyouts work 2 ways. How much a school would owe a coach if they were fired, and how much a coach would owe a school if they left voluntarily. Okay. And so with Dabo, I mentioned it the other day on Twitter, Dabo would be owed $60 million if he was fired from Clemson. He would owe 0 if he pursued another job. And it's why I think he probably should if things don't get significantly better much quicker. And it's the same for James Franklin. James Franklin's current buyout setup is this. If he were fired without cause, he would be owed $50 million, okay? And so I don't care how many alums Penn State has, and they have the largest living alumni base in America, you're not firing James Franklin and giving him $50 million when he's averaging 10-plus wins a year. You're just not doing it. But is it time for James Franklin to think about maybe finding an escape clause? What John Calipari did at Kentucky, what I've proposed Dabo Swinney do at Clemson? I think the answer is absolutely yes. And I think what's interesting about James Franklin, like with Dabo, I think Dabo's going to scratch and claw and fight. And I think Dabo, I think he's going to stay forever. And I think it might be to his own detriment. The one thing I will say about James Franklin, he has not been afraid to flirt with other schools when things are going a little bit sketchy at Penn State. If you remember the 2021 season, that was kind of the beginning of he really can't get over this Ohio State hump, right? That was the year that both LSU and USC fired their head coaches. And from the beginning, it was, could James Franklin be a candidate at LSU? Could he be a candidate at USC? I remember he hired Jimmy Sexton in the middle of that season, and it was a conversation. Is Jimmy Sexton working the phones? Is blah, 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 blah? Is this and that? And then eventually, crap hit the fan. Penn State realized we could lose him. Were they ever going to lose him? Who knows? And they gave him that big $85 million 10-year extension that takes us through the 2031 season, the extension that has now handcuffed them, okay? But at the same time, I do wonder if James Franklin was willing to flirt in 2021, is it time to flirt and, take the analogy to a weird place? Is it time to go all the way? Is it time past third base and come home and try to find a new coaching job? I think it might be. And the thing I'll say about James Franklin, we can criticize him for not being able to beat Ohio State, not being able to beat Oregon, not being able to beat Michigan when they were at their peak. He does win a lot of games, and he is a great program builder. This is a guy that won back-to-back, had back-to-back 9-win seasons at Vanderbilt. As good as Vanderbilt has been the last 18 months, they ain't anywhere close to where they were under James Franklin, and he's had success at multiple stops, and he's had success really building programs up. I was thinking about this. When James Franklin was reported to be a candidate at USC, I don't know if he ever was. The big story was, can you imagine James Franklin in LA, the buzz, the pizzazz, the this, the that? And I was thinking about this on Saturday. Should James Franklin look at UCLA, and should UCLA look at James Franklin? I don't think it's crazy. If he needs a escape, if he goes 9-3 and is not in the playoff, I actually think UCLA would be a very interesting thing. Great recruiting base. The one thing UCLA has lacked for the last 15 years is a coach that is willing to promote the program. James Franklin would be at every event, every beachside bar, every this, every that. And I think he would actually make a lot of sense at UCLA of all places, which of course could have been where his downfall began at Penn State. Virginia Tech, I'm not saying it's a better job, but you get a fresh start. ACC appears to be winnable. I don't know. And we don't have to keep going, and we don't have to talk about James Franklin hypotheticals, because probably much like Dabo Swinney, it's probably all going to end with him being at Penn State next year. But I think for the first time, again, that push-pull of we don't beat the great teams, but we never lose to the bad ones. Well, you just lost to a bad one, and is it a situation where maybe, just maybe, you need to start looking around for the next gig?